Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how the next big new 3D Mario adventure for Nintendo Switch 2 really is not that far off. Now, we just got a Nintendo Direct where they announced the Super Mario Bros. 40th anniversary plans. This includes the collection of Super Mario Galaxy plus Super Mario Galaxy 2, and with this announcement and also with the lack of an announcement for the next 3D Mario, and also with Donkey Kong Bonanza having been made by a big part of the Odyssey team, many are left thinking that the next 3D Mario adventure is very far off. But I still do not think that's the case, and there's actually some interesting signs that we can take away from the Direct, while also considering other things, including some common sense that would lead one to believe that, yeah, 3D Mario is still not that far off. So that's what we're diving into today. But before going forward, let me tell you about these different thumb grips from KontrolFreek, the sponsor for today's video. Specifically, we are going to be focusing on the Performance Thumbsticks Splash Edition, red and blue, neon green and neon pink, and light pink. If you look up close, you can even see a nice little splash symbol on the grips. But these Splash Edition thumbsticks, they come in a variety of different colors, I found to be a really nice advancement for the Switch 1 Joy-Cons. You see, the thing about the Switch 1 Joy-Cons, well, one, the original thumbsticks tend to wear down, but also two, they're kinda small. With these additional attachments, they have a little bit more reach, which make them a lot more comfortable to use for a variety of other games. You can find these all linked in the description below. Okay, so for the first big point, I want to go over a set of leaks that have proven true, and if all these leaks have been proven true, it has implications about another leak coming from the same source. So these series of leaks have come from Nash Weedle, and we've been talking about Nash Weedle throughout the year, how he's continually getting things right about Nintendo Switch 2. There have been so many, we've talked about that before. What I'm simply going to focus on are all the new things that we just got confirmed from the Nintendo Direct that he has leaked beforehand. So for example, he talked about a new Yoshi game being in development. Okay. He also talked about something having to do with Mario Wonder, perhaps a Switch 2 edition where there's new lines for the flower. And guess what? During the Nintendo Direct, Nintendo announced Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, a new side-scrolling Yoshi game, and also a Switch 2 edition for Mario Bros. Wonder with the Bell Park, and also a talking flower with new voice lines. So all of this was teased or leaked by Nash Weedle before the Direct, well before the Direct, and it's all been proven true. And yet, that's just the tip of the iceberg here. Nash Weedle had actually also teased the release date for Metroid Prime 4 more than once. Here in this podcast he had with friend of the channel Attack the Backlog, he was talking about how he believes Metroid Prime 4 would be coming out close to the Christmas season. And in his other tweet here, on August 6th, he talked about how there could still be a major game coming out in December. Now, for this one, it wasn't necessarily Metroid Prime 4, but with the other one, I guess you're thinking that he may have been referring to both. And what's also interesting about this, and this is kind of like just a side note here, he's talking about how there were November Nintendo Directs for two respective series that each saw releases in December. Metroid Prime 4, another one coming on December. Does this mean that Nash Weedle's hinting at a Metroid Prime 4 Direct in November? I think so, but we'll talk about that another day. And yet it continues. In this podcast, we see that Nash Weedle was actually teasing something to be shadow dropped during the Nintendo Direct, and when he was talking about it, he was eating a banana. And everyone knew what he was referring to. It was a big joke that was going on. And yes, sure enough, what happened, Nintendo announced the Donkey Kong Bonanza DLC as the shadow drop for the presentation. For those that don't know what a shadow drop is, it's when something is announced and it comes out literally the exact same day. And that's what happened. And yet there is more that Nash Weedle leaked beforehand that was confirmed during the Nintendo Direct, such as Virtual Boy perhaps coming to Nintendo Switch Online. That was confirmed during the Direct. And yet, there was even more. He talked about there would be more than just Resident Evil 7 that will be announced fairly soon, and we got Resident Evil 7, 8, and 9 announced for Switch 2 during the Direct. So this is all just stuff that was confirmed from this recent Direct. there's a variety of things we've talked about throughout the year that Nash Weedle has been consistently and continually getting right about Switch 2. And so at this point, I feel like the evidence has become more than just overwhelming. At this point, I think it would be weird to think he doesn't have some sort of inside information. That's not to say he won't get things wrong from time to time. It happens. Let's consider another leaker or an insider that many people trust a great deal, perhaps more so than anyone else, and that's Nate the Hate. But what's interesting about Nate the Hate, while he is very good when it comes to Nintendo Direct timing, specifically when thinking about Nintendo game announcements, he's gotten some things wrong as of late, or has actually yet to have been proven correct, such as the Fire Emblem remake, or Kirby Planet Robobot. Both these things were supposed to come to Switch, or Switch 2, and nothing's been announced yet, but we have all these different other Kirby things that are coming, such as Air Riders, we just got Forgotten Land, Switch 2 edition, and they just announced the new Fire Emblem game, and it's not a remake, it's a brand new game that appears to be a sequel of some sort to Three Houses. And so the only point I'm getting at here is that if most people are going to just universally trust Nate the Hate, who does get some things wrong sometimes, perhaps because plans changed behind the scenes, when we have someone like Nash Weedle who's getting a myriad of things correct throughout the year, even after this recent Nintendo Direct, I think it's more than reasonable to have a conversation about these things. And so with all of that in mind, let's talk about the 3D Mario thing. Back in 2023, Nash Weedle had talked about how he had heard about a 3D Mario project that would have 3D Mario traversing different Nintendo worlds. This was back in 2023. We've talked about this before, but what we haven't talked about is an update that Nash Weedle provided during a podcast as shared here by Hugo Gaming on Twitter back in August, so I'll go ahead and read it. Rumor, concept of the next 3D Mario multiverse on Switch 2. In the recent podcast of At Mundo en Comunidad, Nash Weedle talked about the potential concept of the next Mario 3D on Switch 2. Quote, I don't have much new information. The last thing I heard, and that was quite a while ago already, is the concept they intended to start working on. A kind of Mario multiverse with other Nintendo sagas. This part's not in quotes. The idea, the concept for this next 3D Mario would therefore be to offer a multiverse that would feature levels in Hyrule, Brinstar, or Metroid, etc. That would be exciting, but continuing, still according to Nash Weedle, this could also explain why Mario Kart World didn't incorporate other Nintendo universes to avoid any confusion with the next 3D Mario. And that's an interesting thought there, because Mario Kart World has been focused on just the universe of Mario, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe it actually brought in other Nintendo franchises, and it seems like they've gone in the opposite direction here. They're honing in on just Mario universe stuff with Mario Kart World. And so maybe there is something to that idea there. But continuing, however, Nintendo might be bothered by the fact that Astrobot, in parallel, proposed the same concept on PlayStation 5. The only thing that makes me a bit worried is that Nintendo said we don't want it to seem like we've copied Astrobot. So from this, my overall takeaway is that Nash Weedle heard about this 3D Mario project a couple years ago at this point, and since then, he hasn't heard much, so there's certainly a possibility that there could have been changes. Maybe Nintendo would make some adjustments based off what they've seen of Astrobot from PlayStation. Maybe Nintendo would just focus on Mario Universe stuff for Mario Kart World if they do have something else planned for 3D Mario. Both of these seem to be going in opposite directions here. And so even if we trust Nash Weedle 100%, they themselves are acknowledging that there could have been some changes because it's been some time. But it's at least some interesting insight in terms of what we may be able to see for the next 3D Mario, which I'm sure some people would find exciting. I would. I think it would be really awesome to see something like that, but until we see it in practice, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be concerned. But what would be good news from this is that it would show that Nintendo has indeed been working on 3D Mario for a little bit, and it's not like they haven't been thinking about this. And actually, there's another leak that I believe has some pretty strong credibility as well. And this is going back to Midori. For those who don't know, Midori was someone who operated on a certain alias, and they were responsible for a variety of leaks from Sega and Atlas and all this stuff, and there was some controversy there. But they had also leaked 8 different Nintendo codename projects 3 of which have been fully confirmed, 2 others seem likely to be true. One of them being Silver Star, as you see discussed in this article here, which at the time we theorized would be a 3D Donkey Kong game made by the Mario Odyssey team, and well, that was confirmed this year. But another of the codenames, one of the ones that has yet to have been confirmed, the 3 remaining ones we haven't seen anything of, one of them is SP Red, but what we understand from Nintendo codenames, Red always has to do with the mainline Mario titles, and we don't know what SP Red is yet. It stands to reason that SP Red is for the next 3D Mario project. And so, if we were to believe these leakers, who have been getting a lot right, are very consistent and reliable in terms of their sources on Nintendo stuff, then we should absolutely believe that 3D Mario has been in the works for some time. Now, another element to consider when it comes to this conversation, though, is Donkey Kong Bonanza, because it has been confirmed this has been made by the Mario Odyssey team. But what's interesting about this is that Koizumi, who's known for leading the 3D Mario projects, was not leading the Donkey Kong Bonanza project, which supports the notion that Nintendo has still been working on 3D Mario, and Bonanza has simply been another project that members of the Odyssey team have been working on. It has been nearly 8 years since the release for Super Mario Odyssey back in October of 2017. So while we know that they were tinkering around with Bonanza throughout most of the Switch era, I think it also is reasonable to think that it wouldn't take them 8 years to just work on Donkey Kong Bonanza. There has to have been more. And as we just talked about, we have 2 different insiders with a really strong track record that have indicated that 3D Mario has been in development, which really should come as no shocker because Nintendo's always working on 3D Mario, and for every single hardware release, there has always been a new mainline entry fairly early on into every console lifecycle. I don't think that's changing for Switch 2. But then we take a look at the Mario Anniversary Direct, and they had this big anniversary presentation to open up the Nintendo Direct, and they didn't announce 3D Mario. And I actually remember talking about this possibility before the Direct, that if they don't show off 3D Mario, it could be concerning, that people would be worried, and that I thought Nintendo should at least make some sort of mention of a new 3D Mario project. But I wrestled around with this idea because I thought maybe the rumored Galaxy 2 remaster at the time, which has since been confirmed, would be fairly ambitious. And so if they were to have a fairly ambitious Galaxy 2 remaster that even has some new content in there, then that would be the kind of project that would be concerning, and then it would be a situation where perhaps Nintendo should at least give us some acknowledgement that they're working on the next 3D Mario project. But that's not exactly what happened. What happened was that yes, we got Galaxy 2 remastered, but it's a very subtle remastering, and it's part of a collection with Galaxy 1 that's also a subtle remastering. These aren't projects that required a significant team or significant development time. There doesn't look to be any sort of new playable content in there. There is a whole Rosalina art book thing, which is some extra story stuff, which is cool, but it's not like they spent a long time in development creating new levels and new gameplay. That's not what happened here. And so what I think is going on is that Nintendo is focusing on the Mario Galaxy movie as the real big Mario universe announcement, and there's all these other smaller things, and that if they were to have included an announcement for the next new 3D Mario project, that'll be perhaps too much when you factor in the movie stuff and also this Galaxy 1 and 2 collection. And here's a thought that I find interesting, and perhaps some of you will as well. When we go back to 2023, there was the first of Mario movie of this current era, right? That came out in April of 2023. But it wasn't until a couple months after the release of the movie did Nintendo announce a new mainline Mario title to come out for that holiday that capitalized off the success of the movie, and that was Super Mario Bros. Wonder, a new 2D mainline Mario title. And so I think the direction we may be headed in here is that after this next Mario movie comes out, in April of 2026, very similar timing to the first Mario movie, a couple months later, in the summer, whenever Nintendo decides to have their next big direct for the summer, they will then reveal the next big new 3D Mario to come out for the holiday, to follow up the success of the movie and capitalize on the sales there. Listen, we've been talking about Mario Anniversary plans and including Galaxy 2 and also it being the beginning of Mario movie advertisements for some time already. And the big reasoning behind it is because we've seen Nintendo do things like this before. We've seen that Nintendo has found great financial success by doing these things, and so this reasoning fuels the reasoning behind a new Mario announcement in the summer for a mainline project to follow up the release of the movie. And so I think this is all part of Nintendo's big, grander plan here. I don't think we're in a scenario where Nintendo's not going to have a 3D Mario available within the first couple years of Switch 2. We're not going to have a new 3D Zelda. It looks like Smash Bros. Is pretty far off because currently Sakurai is working on Kirby Air Riders on finishing it up. And while I think Animal Crossing is perhaps coming sooner than later, when we consider all the other things that are clearly appealing to a similar audience, like with this recent Pokemon spin-off and Tomodachi Life, Animal Crossing might not be that close either, right? So if you don't have a new 3D Zelda, if you don't have a new Animal Crossing, if you don't have a new Smash Brothers, I think it would be even stranger to think that Nintendo would skip the first couple years of Switch 2 when it comes to 3D Mario, something that they've never really done. And I actually think the fact that the Galaxy 2 remaster is more on the simple side bodes well for this next big new Mario adventure. Now, some people are thinking that this could mean that Mario Galaxy 3 is going to be the next 3D Mario, and I'm not sure if I agree with that, but hold on a second, maybe there's something to this idea. But I don't think it would be called Mario Galaxy 3. I think it would be its own new thing, because that's usually how Nintendo handles their mainline Mario projects per generation. They don't create a sequel once they've finished off a generation. In fact, Galaxy 2 was kind of a rarity in it being a direct sequel to Galaxy 1. But what I think they could do, while also keeping in mind this rumor of Mario going to different universes, what if they build off the idea of the Galaxy movie and these recent Galaxy games, and also this concept? What if the next Mario game, the next 3D Mario experience, the next big adventure is called Super Mario Universe? It's still keeping with the theming of the Galaxy-style games, but it's its own thing. It will still attract that audience that gets invested into the Galaxy movie and these Galaxy games, but also it opens it up to be its own thing, and it's the kind of name that would also imply visiting different universes, perhaps tying in different Nintendo universes, not just Mario, which feeds into the rumor. So we'll see what actually happens, but I'm kind of feeling good about this idea of a Super Mario Universe coming out holiday 2026 to follow up the success of the Mario Galaxy movie. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.